Welcome to MPT's live coverage of the governor's State of the State address. Right now in the House of Delegates chamber, members of the General Assembly are coming together in joint session to hear what will be Governor Wes Moore's second State of the State speech. Hello from the first floor of the Maryland State House in Annapolis. I'm Jeff Salkin, joined by MPT legislative correspondent Charles Robinson. Charles, what do we expect to hear from the governor today?
First of all, he is going to lay out the plan for which a number of issues. To give you an example, we've got a budget, and initially it wasn't balanced. It is balanced today, or at least till the legislators get a chance to take a look at it. The other part of that is we're going to have some stringent and tough laws concerning juvenile justice, as well as reforms to some of the programs that the state has had some issues with. Understand this. This state, while crime is down, the perception is that crime is not being solved, and that's a bigger problem.
Following the governor's address, we'll bring you a Republican view of the state of the state, that to be delivered by Senator Steve Hershey. We asked a group of Marylanders what issues they would like to hear the governor address in the State of the State.
Well, number one, being a resident in Baltimore, crime is a really big part that we want to see changes in. Of course, unemployment, want to see jobs and high-paying jobs. I know that he has a particular legislation about the red line transportation. We really want to see that happen. So to hear him talk about that will be really, really good.
How can we do more for our children, for the kids in our community, especially in the Baltimore City area? I feel like, we need to give them more activities.
Why is tuition so high for students? We need our education in this life to get far. If we want to make money, have kids,
Wes Moore should make more recreational activities in the city, and we need to find some situation to get the crime rate lower.
What are you doing at the state level and to empower local districts to help in the fight against climate change?
I think it would be nice if he could talk about how to help parents with daycare challenges and education, that kind of thing.
How do you plan to address student-to-teacher ratios in the classroom, given that the current collective bargaining agreement for teachers bans them from negotiating on class size?
What kind of plans do you have dealing with the arts in the city? Is there anything that he plans on executing that to help younger people, just bring more arts to the people around Baltimore?
So now that you are governor and you're on the other side and there's a lot of changes that you want to make, what has been the most challenging for you now that you're in that seat?
And taking a look inside the House of Delegates chamber right now, members of the state Senate have come in and they have taken their seats. Also in attendance, members of the governor's cabinet, some county executives, former Governor Paris Glendening we saw, and other dignitaries. The governor talked for about half an hour last year. We understand it'll be a little bit shorter this year, but one thing we understand he will talk about a lot is working in partnership with the legislature. You know how there's always distinguished guests in the balcony that we'll have a shot of to illustrate certain initiatives of the administration. All of those people this year were selected by legislators and suggested to the administration. So heavily focused on partnership, working with lawmakers.
One of the things you will note in this administration is, unlike the previous administration that never testified on bills, this governor has planned to at least testify on 2 bills and even more possibly. These are initiatives that he has championed. One of those is called the Enough Act, which is an overall initiative to look at how do we streamline, make Marylanders safer, how do we make police efficient, and to kind of answer some of the questions that's been lurking in the background. Can you do better? Because eventually, when we come to year 2, we're going to have a problem with the structural deficit. And understand this right now, this state is not interested in new taxes.
The governor, of course, is a newcomer to politics. He's been governor just over a year now. This is his second legislative session. Previously led a large anti-poverty organization, the Robin Hood Foundation, based in New York. Previously in the Army, a Rhodes Scholar, and
he checks all the boxes. I think he checks the boxes of, you want somebody smart? We got that. You want somebody who has military experience? Got that one too.
Well, and, the golden resume and the fact that he is the nation's only elected black governor now, only the third in history, means that he's talked about for higher office all the time. You'll see him on the Sunday talk shows as a surrogate for the Biden campaign. He's effective in that role. Personal popularity, the last poll was about a 60% approval rating. The governor has not had to deal with a lot of controversy. As Charles mentioned, we started with a budget surplus in his first year. Now the projections are a little gloomier, a little bit of red ink on the horizon, and this at a time when Maryland has either the nation's lowest unemployment rate or close to it, under 2%. It's come down a full point in the last year, while the national unemployment rate has stayed stable. Let's dig into some of these budget issues a little bit more and how the state may deal with it. Charles filed this report when the governor unveiled his budget.
We will make Maryland safer. We will make Maryland more affordable. We will make Maryland more competitive. And we will continue to make Maryland the state that serves.
The 2025 budget comes in at $63.1 billion, smaller than last year. It fills several promises made by the governor, including not to raise taxes. Its highlights include continued record funding for education and making good on the Kerwin Commission's blueprint. You'll see additional funding for public safety, $16 million in additional funding for juvenile service, and a cost of living increase for state employees.
So how did we go from having a budget deficit to having a budget surplus? Well, there was some reallocation of funds as well as some resetting of budget totals.
The projected deficit in the Maryland Department of Transportation was closed with a one-time transfer of $150 million from the rainy day fund. Additionally, the governor used an idea he calls rebasing, looking back at budgets before the COVID pandemic. Some department budgets were tweaked back to pre-pandemic levels.
The proposed budget flips the projected cash shortfall that DLS reported in December of $1.1 billion to a positive cash ending balance of $103 million in fiscal 25.
The Maryland GOP was quick to point out the number of new programs added to the budget. The executive director noted by using transfers will not solve the state's deficits.
Unprecedented stock gains and historic federal stimulus during COVID-19 smoothed out our budgets over the last few years, but extra money in the short term will never solve our long-term structural challenges.
The Senate is up first to tackle the budget.
There is Lieutenant Governor Aruna Miller being introduced in the House chamber, and now the Governor of Maryland.
General Assembly, the Governor of the great state of Maryland, Wes Moore.
At the podium were an apology to the Speaker of the House, Adrian Jones, for taking so long to make it from the door to the podium, because the governor has a lot of handshakes to do, and maybe some selfies. Last year there were definitely selfies. We'll see about this year. Last year I timed it. It was 2.5 minutes of selfies and handshakes to get the governor to the podium. We should do this like Olympic speed skating and see if he's on the pace of last year or a little bit ahead.
Well, he's halfway through, and he's still got a lot more hands to shake. But let me talk a little bit about the wins that this governor has had. First and foremost, the most recent one is getting the Orioles to sign a lease. Now, they haven't completed the entire deal, but that's a win because there was questions as to whether or not the governor had the chutzpah, if you will, of actually cutting a deal with the Angelos family, which owes the Orioles.
I'll tell you this. I wondered at the time, because the governor had a deal, and it included what the Angelos family wanted, which was development rights around the ballpark. And legislative leaders balked at that. Senate President Bill Ferguson in particular, leading to basically shelving that deal. It was maybe the first bump in the road for the governor's honeymoon with the legislature, and of course he's the first Democrat to hold this office since the 2 terms, the 8 years of Governor Hogan. There are some members of the governor's cabinet, governor's appointments secretary, and other members of the team, the transportation secretary. We will be providing a sign language interpretation of the speech. I believe that's the signer and now the governor of Maryland, Wes Moore.
Good afternoon. Madam Speaker, Mr. President, Madam Lieutenant Governor, members of the General Assembly, members of our congressional delegation, colleagues in state and local government, and my fellow Marylanders. 1 year ago, we began our work together. And we knew that while we had boundless opportunities in this state, and we had blinding potential in this state, we also knew that we were leaving too much potential on the table. And 1 year later, we've still got work to do. We learned a lot of lessons, some hard lessons. But solving big problems does not happen overnight. But let's be clear, a change is happening. And today, the state of our state, it is strong. We've announced the creation of nearly 40,000 new jobs, many of them in communities that have been historically left behind. We have the lowest unemployment rate in the country for the 5th month in a row. Crime is down across the state, and homicides in Baltimore City are the lowest that they have been in 9 years. And communities that have been underestimated and undervalued now have an important seat at the table in the halls of power. So, I'm proud. I'm proud of what we are doing. But most importantly, I'm proud of how we're doing it. The executive and the legislature are working together again. And it feels good. We choose to sweat the details of governing, knowing that our constituents deserve nothing less. And by moving in partnership, we have helped to make life easier for the people that we are here to serve. We have launched a full frontal assault on child poverty that will lift a combined 160,000 children up the rung on the economic ladder. We've returned stolen SNAP benefits to our most vulnerable, to thousands of Marylanders who are living paycheck to paycheck. We've protected 5,000 Maryland children who are at risk of having their Medicaid coverage taken away. We've worked with farmers and watermen to get healthy meals to food deserts. We've positioned Maryland to meet our climate goals and lead in the cleanup of the Chesapeake Bay. Importantly, we got together and we got some big stuff done. But the truth is, these are not just our wins. These are Maryland's wins. Now, I know I talk a lot about partnership. And I know if the state received a nickel for every time I said the word partnership, we would have all of our budget issues solved. Right, Senator Hershey? But let's be clear, partnership is not the goal. Fulfilling the promise of Maryland is the goal. Partnership is how we're going to get there. Because for too long, we have watched how the executive would pick fights with the legislature in the media instead of showing real leadership and engagement in the State House. So we've decided. We're going to move differently. And our state is going to be better because of it. The challenges will be shared. The setbacks will be shared. But the victories, they'll be shared too. We can't agree on everything, and we won't. The truth is, it would be weird if we did. But we can and we will work together to achieve common goals. And I want to talk about some of those shared goals today. Tomorrow, our administration will unveil our plan to guide our work together. Tomorrow, we will unveil our state plan, and it is the first state plan that this state has had in nearly a decade. It doesn't just set the agenda for the next 3 months, it will chart the course that we will take for the next 3 years. And our state plan is about much more than just aspirational targets. The plan that we are going to lay out, it will lay out specific, actionable, realistic, and measurable goals. And we've built these priorities by listening to the people who sent us here in the first place, our constituents. Last year, we went to your districts with you. We toured an electric vehicle plant in Hagerstown, and we sat down with students in Glen Burnie to talk about gun violence. We drove tractors with farmers on the Eastern Shore. By the way, some of those tractors are pretty bad. And we grieved together in Washington County after the tragic and unconscionable killing of Judge Andrew Wilkinson. In our first year, we've traveled with all of you to all 24 jurisdictions in the state of Maryland, and we listened to the people together. Our state plan is not a reflection of my aspirations. It's not a reflection of our aspirations. It's a reflection of theirs. And today, I want to talk a little bit about what we heard. First, we heard that the people of our state want to make Maryland safer. Public safety remains this administration's top priority, and that will not change. We will protect Marylanders where they live, where they work, where they worship, and where they go to school. And hate has no home in the state of Maryland. But if you talk to people in our neighborhoods, they'll tell you this isn't a discussion that can happen in absolutes. That we need to move beyond the simplicity of how pundits talk about public safety and move towards a complexity of how people experience public safety. Because the truth is that the sound of a police siren does have a different pitch depending on the neighborhood that you grow up in. I felt handcuffs on my wrist when I was 11 years old because our community was over-policed and we knew it. However, we still wanted to feel protected from violent crime and people who would have harm in our communities. That people shouldn't have to choose between feeling safe in their skin and feeling safe in their communities. Yet these are the kinds of false choices that dominate the public safety debate. Do you support law enforcement, or do you want to build stronger neighborhoods? Do you want to hold criminals accountable, or do you want to focus on rehabilitation? We're told to pick a side, oftentimes by people who frankly do not have an interest in solving the problem. And so to break these false choices, we need everybody at the table. Our administration will continue an all-of-the-above approach to public safety. We will listen to law enforcement, and we will listen to the communities that they protect. We will listen to states' attorneys, and we will listen to the public defenders. We will listen to elected leaders, and we will listen to local advocates. We're up against a new challenge, and we need to come up with these new solutions. Our state is facing a record of high vacancies in public safety jobs. We need to address them, and we will, with legislation that we've introduced. Marylanders are seeking justice for victims of crime, more accountability for people who break the law, and better rehabilitation for our children. We must answer them, and we will, by working in partnership with the General Assembly. Neighborhoods are calling for us to get these illegal guns off of our streets and out of our neighborhoods. And for bringing consequences to those who do not hear us loud enough. And we must hear them. And we have. And I'm proud that Maryland will be the first state to answer the call by President Biden to launch a statewide Center for Firearm Violence Prevention and Intervention, and we will deal with this issue. So for the people who have said to us that we need to make Maryland safer, I say this to you. We've heard you, and we're moving. Second, we've heard that people want us to make Maryland more affordable. In 2022, Maryland was ranked as the 7th most expensive state to live in. We're not proud of that. But I tell you what, that also tells a story. It's a story of the entrepreneur in Cumberland with a bold idea to create a new business, but who doesn't have the money to make rent this month, let alone start a company. It's a story of the mom in Leonardtown who works multiple jobs just to put food on the table. This year, we will address two big items, not just in the budget of every family in the state, but on the mind of every family in the state: housing and childcare. Most Marylanders in rental properties put a third of their monthly paycheck towards rent. Many can no longer afford to live in the home in the same neighborhood that they grew up in. Our state faces a problem of supply and demand. Prices go up because we do not have enough homes. So building more homes will help to bring prices down. I've introduced 3 housing bills to address that in this session. We will create new financial tools to drive development and redevelopment in communities that need it the most. We will build new pathways to home ownership and wealth creation. We will stand up for renters and confront the harsh truth that Maryland has the highest eviction filing rates in America. We will cut government red tape that makes it harder to build quality housing. We must and we will protect our farmland and our wild habitats. And we need to make sure that we're also incentivizing housing in places where we should build. Guys, this is about lives and livelihoods. We need to make it easier for people to live here, to stay here, and to retire here. And to that end, we've assembled the most comprehensive housing package that any Maryland administration has introduced in years. And we will work together to get it done. But making life easier for working families doesn't end with housing. Last month, the comptroller released a report outlining the affordability problems in our state that families are facing every day. The report highlighted that as the cost of childcare increases, overall female employment decreases by 5%. And that's why our proposed budget includes the single largest investment for funding of childcare in Maryland's history. That investment is going to support 45,000 Maryland children this year. And we can make these investments in childcare and housing without raising taxes on Marylanders. There are leaders in this chamber who have always fought for kitchen table issues. I know because I get to partner with someone who has used her life work for 2.5 decades to make this real. Speaker Adrienne Jones. Because of Speaker Jones, Maryland leads the nation in making prescription drugs more affordable. Because of Speaker Jones, reproductive health care isn't just a right for Maryland women and families. Reproductive health care is more affordable, too. My friend, thank you for your leadership. So let the people who said that we need to make Maryland more affordable, all the people who came up to us when we were on the road and say we need our state to be more affordable, I want them to hear me clear too. We've heard you, and we're moving. Third, we heard that people want us to make Maryland more competitive. Last year, we got Maryland's economy moving. We secured federal investments in the Frederick Douglass Tunnel Project. We've ensured that the new FBI headquarters will be located in Prince George's County. We have kept the Orioles in Baltimore for decades to come. We've delivered over $1.4 billion to small and minority-owned businesses through the Board of Public Works. We've provided more than 130,000 laptops to underserved households to narrow the digital divide. And we work to accelerate the clean energy transition in every part of our state and not just some. Now, I'm grateful to President Biden, our federal delegation, and all of the state and local and municipal leaders who have been fighting for these projects since day one. But together, what we showed is Maryland can win this moment. And together, going forward, we will continue to build on our progress. We will invest in industries of the future with funding for life sciences and biotech and data centers and cyber. We will cut red tape so that Maryland is the friendliest state in the nation to start and build a business. We will make reforms to the procurement process so the state of Maryland can be a true partner to entrepreneurs, and we will engage in a robust debate of how Maryland funds transportation projects across the state. Team, we've got to make it easier for people to travel from where they live to where opportunity lies. But the state of Maryland has funded transportation the same way for a decade. That's got to change. To win the next decade, we need to make Maryland the best state in the country for our kids and understand who it is that we're supposed to be fighting for while we're here. When our young people get the tools that they need to strengthen their minds and strengthen their hearts, they grow up to dream and to lead. That's why we must build stronger pathways to success for our young people, no matter what road they choose. We need to work with our friends in labor and our friends in the business community to grow apprenticeships and job training programs. And we need to keep investing in substance use services, mental health, lead abatement, and making sure that we're taking care of our children and their families. And we need to honor our pledge to make Maryland schools the best in this entire country. It is time. It is time. It is time to support our students. It is time to support our educators. And it's time to support our public schools. And that time is now. And that is why, for the second year in a row, our administration has proposed record funding for K-12 schools and fully funded the blueprint for Maryland's future. The blueprint is a once-in-a-generation opportunity. And we can seize that opportunity, but only if we do it in partnership. We must bring together local electeds, school districts, legislators, and yes, the governor's office too. We're going to get this right. We have to. But we have to be clear-eyed, honest, committed, and united in order to make this real. The money's important, but strategy, accountability, and partnership are imperative to get this done right. we've got to spend smarter across all of our state programs in a way that respects the taxpayer, in a way that actually follows data, in a way that responds to the needs of our communities. So last month, we unveiled landmark legislation that's guided by that exact approach. It's called the Enough Act. And we will use it to continue our assault on child poverty, especially concentrated and generational child poverty. Engaging neighborhoods, organizations, unions, governments, and households. That's what Enough stands for. But it's more than an acronym. It's a governing philosophy. We believe that people who are closest to the challenge are the ones who are closest to the solutions. They're just hardly ever at the table. If they offer the vision, we can offer the support and not the other way around. The Enough Act is about moving in partnership to create safe and thriving communities. It's about involving our communities and moving in partnership to support healthy and economically secure families. It's about moving in partnership to ensure access to high-quality education and health care for our children who need and deserve it the most. And I'm proud to stand with leaders who've championed this kind of work for years and who've reached out to communities who've been left behind. I'm talking about people like Chairwoman Vanessa Atterbury, I'm talking about people like President Pro Tem Malcolm Augustine. I'm talking about folks like the members of the Legislative Black Caucus and their fearless leader, Chair Janelle Wilkins. Now it's time to make work, wages, and wealth a reality for every Marylander. Now is the time to drive economic growth in all of our communities, including our communities of color. Now is the time to eliminate the racial wealth gap, and we are going to be unapologetic about it. Because let's be clear, the racial wealth gap is not hurting a group. The racial wealth gap is hurting all of us. Because if we can narrow that gap, we will see how it will increase the GDP of an entire state. And do not take my word for it, take data. We can and we will get this done. So to the people who have said to me that we need to make Maryland more competitive, I say this to you. I hear you, and we've heard you, and we're moving. And fourth, and finally, we've heard the people want us to continue to make Maryland the state that serves. And that means supporting those who every single day run towards danger instead of running away from it. That means standing with our state workers who oftentimes go unsung and go unheard. And that means uplifting the families of those who put everything on the line for us to help keep us safe. We will address each of these goals with policy, and with partnership. This year, we've introduced legislation to ensure our firefighters receive the medical benefits that they deserve. We've worked with unions to deliver a raise to state employees for the second year in a row. And we are working together to ensure that our military families aren't forgotten. You know, when I deployed to Afghanistan, I thought military service and deployments were toughest on the soldiers. I was wrong. It's toughest on the families. And today, I'm thinking about two people who know that struggle. Our Lieutenant Governor, Aruna Miller, and our First Lady, Dawn Moore. Our administration has declared 2024 the year for military families in the state of Maryland. And we will uplift Maryland service members, military spouses, and caregivers, expanding on opportunities for them to work and secure better benefits. And our Lieutenant Governor, the First Lady, and our Secretary of Veterans Affairs, they will lead the charge. This year, we will also double the number of Marylanders in the service year option. Now I'm proud to be up here with a person who started this work before I decided to run for office in the first place, Senate President Bill Ferguson. President Ferguson, thank you for your leadership and for your vision. Maryland Corps paved the way. And together, our state service programs are changing lives. I'm proud that we have one of our founding service year members here in the gallery. His name is Tamir. I love that red shirt, man. He was born and raised in Western Maryland. He is serving in the Asian American Center of Frederick to preserve, yes, woohoo! To preserve and celebrate AAPI history. Tamir, you're not only our present, you're our future. And thank you for making Maryland the best place in the world to change the world. We appreciate you. And thank you. So to all the people who came up to us when we were on the road and said that we need to continue to make Maryland the state that serves, we hear you, and we're moving. Those are the 4 pillars of our success this year. We will make Maryland safer, we will make Maryland more affordable, we will make Maryland more competitive, and we will continue to make Maryland the state that serves. And to get there, we need the partnership of our legislators. We need the partnership of our constitutional officers. We need the partnership of our county executives and our local electeds. We need the partnership of our union leaders and our community stakeholders and our advocates and philanthropies and households and neighborhoods and businesses and, y'all getting a theme, right? We need the partnership for people who are willing to serve not just as our inspirations, but who are willing to serve as our guides. We need the partnership of people like Michelle Taylor. Michelle works in a community health center that treats Marylanders who have been turned away by other providers. Marylanders who are living paycheck to paycheck. Marylanders in the LGBTQIA+ community. Marylanders without health insurance. She's a mother of a beautiful daughter named Dominique. And both of them are with us today. Can you both please stand so you can recognize them? We need the partnership of people like Cleota Walker. Miss Cleo. Go ahead, Miss Cleo. She's so beautiful. Miss Cleo is a village elder in Cherry Hill. Miss Cleo sees the promise in every child, and her mission in life is to steer kids, youth, and adults away from violence and towards opportunity. She believes in the power of partnership. She believes in the power of prevention, and her legacy will endure in the future leaders that she has mentored and guided. And by the way, that beautiful woman is 82 years young, and she is still continuing to push. Ms. Cleo, we appreciate you so much. And we need the partnership of people like Dr. Elizabeth Claiborne. Dr. Claiborne is a mom of two and an adjunct professor at the amazing University of Maryland. She loves teaching medicine. But she always wanted to be an entrepreneur as well. As a woman of color, she struggled to find capital to get her idea off the ground. But just like a good Terp, Dr. Claiborne does not give up. She was 6 months pregnant at the height of COVID and still went to work in the front lines at Prince George's Hospital Center. Eventually, she raised enough money to start her business, and today she is the founder and the CEO of her own medical device company that's focused on helping children and families, and it's located right here in the state of Maryland. God bless you, Dot, and thank you. Michelle, Miss Cleo, Dr. Claiborne, they remind all of us that this work will take all of us. In 1 Corinthians, Paul the Apostle wrote about love. He told us that love is patient and kind. Love keeps no record of being wrong. It does not rejoice about injustice, but rejoices whenever the truth wins out. Well, I think about partnership the exact same way. Partnership doesn't keep score. Partnership has no ego. And partnership isn't partisan. Partnership is what happened when we all learned about Charlotte Hall. Now, I know everybody in this chamber, regardless of party, was enraged and disturbed when we learned about the level of disregard and neglect that was being shown to our greatest patriots. And Republicans, like Jack Bailey, worked with Democrats like Brian Crosby work together to respond. And our administration, led by Secretary Tony Woods, a combat veteran himself, coordinated with local and state and national leaders to get to work. 3 months ago, I visited Charlotte Hall, and I heard from veterans about how much that teamwork mattered. And one of them said something to me that I will never forget. He said, "We made thank you for your service actually mean something." He was talking about all of us. He was talking about every one of you. Partnership is what we did and what we saw when a storm hit Westminster in August. The rain and the wind knocked down 30 utility poles. 33 adults and 14 children were trapped in their cars for hours under live wires. If one of them would have gotten out of their cars, it would have been catastrophic. But we worked together with local leadership across the political spectrum. We worked with law enforcement. We worked with our remarkable Department of Emergency Management to get the situation under control. I visited Westminster the next morning. And Lieutenant Governor and I, we walked through damage and we walked through debris. I stood there relieved, knowing that all 47 Marylanders got home safely that night. Guys, when things are hard, partnership only becomes more important. We need to stand united with a clear commitment of doing the work, with a clear understanding that the months and the years ahead, they will be hard, but if there is one thing that the last 12 months have taught me, is that Marylanders do hard things. And they want us to accomplish those things in partnership. This will be Maryland's decade. Not because we say so, but because we make it so. Together. Thank you. God bless this great state, and let's make sure we leave no one behind.
Governor Wes Moore's State of the State address, now with the Republican view, Senate Minority Leader Steve Hershey.
Good afternoon. I'm Senator Steve Hershey, proudly representing District 36 and the Upper Eastern Shore constituents of Caroline, Cecil, Kent, and Queen Anne's counties. As you've just heard, Governor Moore has put forth a bold and ambitious plan for Maryland, one that is built on the promise that no Marylander be left behind. This is a vision that we can certainly support. After all, our ultimate goal is the success and well-being of every single Marylander. However, we must underscore that achieving such a lofty goal requires much more than grand declarations. It necessitates concrete actions and collaborative efforts. To this end, we are fully prepared to work alongside Governor Moore and his administration to seek and find common ground that will advance the interest and welfare of all Marylanders. As we embark on this journey of collaboration, it is also our duty to raise concerns whenever we perceive that actions taken may not be in the best interest of our constituents. Governor Moore has rightly stated that Marylanders should not have to choose between safety and justice. We wholeheartedly agree. The safety of our citizens in their homes, vehicles, schools, and communities is of paramount importance. We believe Governor Moore is sincere when he says that public safety is a top priority of his administration. However, the governor's recently unveiled package of bills focusing on crime in our state merely address enhancing victims' compensation, expanding apprenticeship programs to recruit law enforcement, and creating an Obama-Biden scheme Center for Firearm Violence Prevention and Intervention. To make a real difference, the governor will have to push for a more proactive plan that defines swift and certain consequences for violent criminals, thus preventing Marylanders from becoming victims in the first place. Our vision for Maryland is one where public safety is not just a priority, but the foundation upon which all other aspects of society rest. It is impossible to envision a thriving state without a strong commitment to ensuring that repeat violent offenders are held accountable and that our communities are protected from harm. This vision requires a balanced approach that supports law enforcement and the judicial system in their critical roles. This is why the Joint Republican Caucus has introduced the Safe Communities Act, which will eliminate diminution or good time credits for those convicted of first and second-degree murder. For other crimes of violence, this bill will cap diminution credits to no more than a 10% reduction in sentence as determined by a judge and prohibit bail for an individual charged with a crime of violence if similar pending charges are evidenced. We have also introduced the Violent Firearms Offender Act, which will increase penalties for committing crimes with a stolen firearm, creates penalties for an individual who gives or sells someone a firearm knowing they will use it to commit a crime, and closes the drug dealer loophole. Not surprisingly, 89% of Marylanders support making the theft of a handgun a felony from a simple misdemeanor. This common sense measure was discussed by the governor, but not included in his public safety agenda. We have supported this legislation for the last 4 years and have once again introduced the Gun Theft Felony Act this year. In a little over 1 year, Maryland has gone from a $2 billion budget surplus to a $761 million shortfall that is only projected to grow worse in the upcoming years. While it is a relief that Governor Moore's initial $63.1 billion FY25 budget proposal does not include tax increases, long-term spending is still outpacing revenues, and this budget does not identify a solution to this ongoing dilemma. An exorbitant part of the blame for Maryland's multi-billion-dollar deficit can be put at the feet of the Democrat leadership, which has advanced one-size-fits-all education reform known as the Blueprint for Maryland's Future, also referred to as Kirwan. This alone increased the state's $9.2 billion annual spending on public schools by an additional $40 billion over the next 10 years. In an attempt to make up for undisciplined spending, Democrat legislators are now proposing an omnibus tax increase proposal that would raise taxes on job-creating corporations, raise the state's so-called death tax, and increase the capital gains taxes. Even if these tax hikes were passed, this $1.6 billion annual projection does not incorporate how much revenue would be lost from individuals, businesses, and jobs leaving the state as a result of them. Conversely, Republicans have introduced the Economic Prosperity Act, which would lower the income tax rates and rate brackets, reducing the amount of income taxes paid by all Marylanders. Our bill will increase take-home pay and put more of the hard-earned money back into the hands of Marylanders. Additionally, we will continue to build on our previous year's successes to alleviate the tax pressures on our retirees and those that have served in the military. We recognize that tax cuts are only achievable if we address the expensive mandates from the past and refrain from adding new ones that will further weigh down the budget. We must be disciplined in prioritizing the programs that are cost-effectively achieving their intended results while eliminating or scaling back the ones that are no longer necessary. In the early days of the Moore administration, we have observed, with growing concern, certain decisions and policies that, in our view, could potentially leave some Maryland children at a disadvantage. This is especially true in the realm of education. Maryland prides itself on making record investments in public education, with taxpayer money being allocated in unprecedented amounts. Yet despite these significant financial commitments, the results we are seeing do not seem to align with the level of investment. This discrepancy raises important questions about the efficiency and effectiveness in how our educational resources are being utilized. Furthermore, it is crucial to recognize the diverse needs and circumstances of Maryland families when it comes to education. While some have the means to choose private education for their children, many do not. This disparity led to the establishment of the Broadening Options and Opportunities for Students Today, or BOOST program, aimed at providing scholarships to some of Maryland's most economically disadvantaged students to attend private schools that better meet their needs. The success of the BOOST program is evident in its reach and impact, benefiting thousands of students, including a significant number of children of color and English language learners. Over the stringent opposition of the Maryland's Teachers Union, Republicans have led the efforts to fully fund and expand BOOST. It has never been more clear in Annapolis. The Democrats represent the teachers union, while the Republicans represent the parents and students. A thriving economy is crucial for the well-being of everyone in Maryland. Unfortunately, our state ranks amongst the lowest in the nation regarding tax rates, regulatory challenges, and the climate for fostering private sector growth. It is unsustainable to keep imposing heavy burdens on our businesses without expecting some to relocate. Early last month, the Comptroller released Maryland's State of the Economy report, which underscored that Maryland is at a 1.6% GDP growth rate, while neighboring states and the national average are just below 14%. According to the Maryland Chamber of Commerce's Red Book, which provides key indicators of Maryland's business climate, Maryland ranks 47th in the country for the cost of doing business. This is why Maryland Republicans have introduced the Economic Competitive Act, which will reduce Maryland's corporate income tax rate from 8.25% to 6.25% over the next 4 years. Lastly, Maryland should reconsider its approach to environmental policies, particularly the proposal to blindly follow California vehicle emission standards that will ban the sale of gasoline-powered vehicles in Maryland by model year 2035, a move that is sure to have detrimental economic consequences for automotive dealerships and repair shops across the state. Applying such extreme measures without pragmatic consideration once again puts Maryland at an economic disadvantage compared to our neighboring states. To allow time for thoughtful consideration, we have introduced legislation prohibiting Maryland from implementing the new California Advanced Clean Cars Act regulations for an additional 2 years. Under the previous administration, Maryland Republicans were able to demonstrate a clear and irrefutable commitment to fiscal balance, reducing regulations, and cutting taxes. Empirical data illustrates those states with lower taxes, pro-business policies, reasonable regulatory environments outperform other states in job growth, population growth, and income growth. In closing, while we share Governor Moore's desire to transcend partisan divisions and work together for the betterment of Maryland, it is imperative that we also present alternative solutions and ideas. The Republican caucus is committing to advancing legislation that addresses the critical needs facing our state, from ensuring safety and improving educational outcomes to revitalizing our economy. Our proposals are grounded in practical, common-sense approaches that we believe will make a positive difference in the lives of Marylanders. We believe that by working together in a spirit of bipartisanship and mutual respect, we can achieve a Maryland that is safe for all its citizens, offers unparalleled opportunities for education, and boasts a dynamic and inclusive economy. Thank you for taking the time to listen to the Republican perspective on the state of the state.
For more on the state and the week in Maryland politics, join us for State Circle Friday evening at 7. For all of us at MPT, I'm Jeff Salkin. Thank you for watching and have a good day.